Hello, Rosemary. Good to see you.
Hello, Anne.
Uh,
It's lovely
So
to be
I want to say welcome. It's lovely to see you. I just want to welcome everybody else to this edition of Real Lives. We've got a great real life to share, Rosemary's story today. Now, some of us at Sal will know you from back, but some of us won't know you at all. So would you like to just introduce yourself to us?
My name is Rosemary Sheldon. I'm married to Colin. He came from London, England, to work in Ireland. And I came from Canada, from Toronto, Canada, to work in Ireland. We met and fell in love and got married in 1975. We had two boys, Stephen and Peter. Peter suffered with epilepsy all his life. So quite a lot of I was like a 24/7 carer. Even when he went off to school, if he took a seizure, I get a phone call, come and get him. So what are we doing and why are we here? Well, we have come here in Ireland to share God's message with people around. And I have been here 48 years, and Colin has been here 47 years. So we've had a long time working here. Yeah.
Wow, brilliant. So I know that you have, we could spend the whole time talking about your beautiful granddaughter, but who I'm sure is a delight to you, but we won't do that. You've already touched on the fact that health affects your family. You know, you've had ill health in the past. What about your health? I can see you've got a tube. So do you want to just tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Usually, up until about 5 years ago, I kept relatively healthy. But 5 years ago, I was diagnosed with having a terminal lung disease called Sjogren's, which is a Swedish name. And from that time onwards, if I got a slight bit of a cold or, if my breathing wasn't so good, because I'm an asthmatic as well, I would end up on steroids, medication, strong antibiotics, and quite often would end up in the hospital for 4 or 5 days. And you would get over it once you had these stronger drugs. So yeah, that has been my my health reasonings up until that time. And then when this pandemic virus, COVID-19, came into Ireland about mid-March or somewhere like that, I was well aware, because of my underlying lung conditions, that I had to self-isolate. And that's basically what I did. And yeah, so that's, and about a week after I had self-isolated, Colin too began to self-isolate because the schools were closed. So he was around from around about the 23rd of March.
Right. Okay. So were you able to keep well during that time? How did it go? So sort of towards the end of March. Were you well, or?
Well, the whole, I didn't say this, but the whole of 2019, I was really well. I wasn't on strong medicine. I didn't have a visit to the hospital, and we were just thanking the Lord. So when this pandemic came into Ireland, we were still aware that I needed to be careful. And on the 23rd of March, I went to the doctor because I wasn't feeling well. And, well, actually, I didn't go. We phoned because you weren't allowed to go to see the doctor. And he sent me to the hospital with a letter. And I went. They took me in very quickly. They did the usual tests, but they didn't do the test for the COVID. They did an x-ray to see if there was something the matter with my lungs. And they did blood tests. And the doctor that was there on the ward said, you are well, you don't have, your x-ray shows clear and your bloods are clear. So we don't want you to stay here because you may get other bugs that are in the hospital. So he sent me home. And I went home. But that very night, I came down with further symptoms of the COVID. And when I phoned the doctor the next morning, he sent me right back to the hospital. And when he did that, I was in A&E, and when I accident and emergency, and when I did that, who would be there but my diabetic doctor? He said, Rosemary, he was surprised in some senses, but he probably wasn't, because he had phoned Colin for some reason. Colin and my own doctor had talked, and then my own doctor called my diabetic specialist, and so that's part of the reason why he was there. And so I ended up in the hospital. They tested me then for COVID, and within maybe 5 hours, it wasn't a whole day anyway, they then told me that I had developed the COVID-19.
So despite having been well for much of 2019, as the pandemic sort of took hold, you were one of the sort of people to become seriously unwell. So when you went into the hospital, you were saying that Colin couldn't come in with you. Did you feel you sort of been handed over into a system that did God manage to provide anybody for you at that time, or did you feel at the mercy of the system?
I think in some senses I was well aware of how serious this was. I had said to Colin and to my sisters, whom I Skyped because they were in Canada, I said, this is something that is going to be a God thing. Either God bring me out of the hospital, or he would heal me and he would take me home to my heavenly home to be with him. So I was certainly aware that whichever case it was, it maybe wasn't going to be easy, And to have familiar faces, yes, it was good. Later on in that day, that same day, we had a friend who is a doctor, young girl that only qualified last year, and she saw my name come up. Where she saw it, I don't know. I didn't ask her. But she knew that I was in A&E, and she came, and she prayed with me. She talked to me, and I said the same thing to her as I had said to my diabetic consultant. If I'm coming through this, it would be a miracle of God. And if I'm not, I'm going home to be with him. And
Yes.
because she is a Christian, she certainly understood that. And that was a good thing to be able to.
Yes, that was lovely. Yes. So as you were sort of going in, you entrusted yourself to the system, to the doctors, but you also completely put yourself in God's hands, as it were, for his outcome. And he sent you an encourager at that time, somebody who you knew, who knew your faith and who could just give you a word of encouragement and pray with you. That must have been a real blessing, just at a dark time. So, so you're admitted into hospital, into a COVID ward, I assume. How did you get on there? Did you continue to feel God's presence and God's speaking to you?
I certainly did. Because you couldn't, Colin couldn't come in, and you saw nobody apart from the doctors and the nurses and the people that brought your food and, the cleaners of your room. And I was in a room all on my own. So yes, I would have still prayed and on the Sunday, I decided, well, maybe I could try and get the church service up on the telly that was in the room. And interesting enough, that television didn't have a remote control. So I had to ask a nurse or a carer or something to put on the television on this channel. And the person that spoke was the Archbishop of Dublin. Now, that doesn't make any difference, but he was the speaker. And he spoke about a passage in the Old Testament in the book of Ezekiel. And it's in chapter 37. And it's only a couple of, there are a whole bunch of verses to do with that. But I just want to say a couple of things. What, sorry, I hadn't just,
it always happens, doesn't it? You lose your place at the wrong minute.
Yes, you do. And this is something God had said, okay? He said, and he's talking about dry bones that were, just scattered around. And he said, I want you to speak to the dry bones, and I want you to make them live. And I want you to put sinew, bones upon them, and make it so that they will know that I am God, that I have prophesied this, and it came about. Now, if you read the whole chapter 37, that explains more. not only did he talk about that, but he also spoke about the story of raising Lazarus from the dead. That's in the New Testament. That's in chapter 11 of John's Gospel. And he's talking to the two sisters. He raised Lazarus from the dead, and they were kind of surprised. And he said to them, I told you, if you would only believe, that you will see this thing. So, in other words, there was a person who was dead and he brought back to life. So, in both of those situations, saying to me, okay, you're in this disease, in this virus, and I'm going to do a new thing. I'm going to bring you back to life. Well, I took that as God's message to me because I believe the Bible is full of promises, and it's how God speaks to us. And so that to me was fantastic. And like I said, yeah.
So that was a real encouragement that you felt that God spoke directly to you through the television, through the speaker there, and also through the sort of feeling of peace and that you had in your heart of his presence with you. And those things were all saying the same thing, that, you know, God was saying to you, I will bring you through. So from that point on, did it get better? Did you begin to feel better?
For the few days just afterward, I really did know that God was in control and that he never failed. And the good thing about it was the ward I was put into was my lung consultant's ward. And it was good to know that he was there. His registrar had said to me that day, we will get you through this. We will get you better and well. And she told that to Colin as well. Which was good. Now I didn't, you're in this ward. You only see people's eyes, because they have coverings of their hair, and they're like in a bodysuit. So you only see them by their eyes. But every single one, didn't matter if it was a nurse or a doctor or somebody who brought you a drink of water or somebody who brought your food, or even the cleaners. They all were like ministering angels, bringing by their words behind these masks. They were bringing cheer. But on Tuesday, the 7th of April, I was really, really at a very low ebb. And I said to the doctor who was taking my bloods yet again, they did this numerous times, and my arms were black and blue from my elbow to my wrist, and they couldn't find veins, and I said to them, maybe it's time to let me go to be with God. He has a place waiting for me, and maybe it's time to let me go. She didn't say anything, but the carer who was with her said, We hear what you're saying, Rosemary, and maybe that's what should happen. But would you believe that night I went to bed? Well, I was in bed. In the middle of the night, in the middle of the night, I woke up. Don't ask me how. I just know that my body had been touched and I was coming through. Now,
Wow.
the funny thing
That's amazing.
That it definitely was.
Yeah, so that's interesting that God didn't just take you from feeling, you know, from sort of giving you this assurance that He was with you and He would bring you through. He didn't just take you from that point to sort of beginning to get better. You still had quite a journey through a dark place to travel, and you didn't feel that you wanted to come through for all of it. So, but do tell us that night. Do tell us about Colin that night, about you know, what he was doing when you started to feel better.
Well, the doctor had said to Colin, I think it's good to keep your phone on. And he said, are you thinking that this will be kind of the end? And she said, I wouldn't put it like that, but I just think it's wise to keep your phone on. So he did. And at 3:00 in the morning, I phoned Colin. And I said, I'm getting better. I know I'm getting better. You know, I'm sure he wasn't happy.
Well, I'm sure when he realized it was you, he was probably delighted, but that was not the call that he was expecting to have from the hospital in the middle of the night.
You're right there.
You must have given him quite a start. So tell us what happened after that. You felt you were getting stronger and you were beginning to come through it. What happened next? Were you able to move on from the COVID ward?
I was. Before I move on, I had a Christian nurse. This girl came from Australia to see where her mother grew up. Her mother had passed away when she was only 3, but she wanted to see what Ireland was like. So she decided to come. And then she got a job as a nurse in this hospital. And the Lord gave her to me. She would come in every day. She worked Monday to Friday. All right. So she'd come in every day. She had a cheery message. And, you know, it was really, really good. And her name was Taylor. And I just remember, you know, when I was getting better and I was about to be shifted out of the COVID ward to another ward in the hospital, Taylor came with me. And one of the things she said was, when you're better and through, you will come back to us and, you know, say thank you. And I said, I certainly will. But unfortunately, that didn't happen because the day I left the COVID ward, it was being cleaned out, if you know what I mean. And by the time I left the other ward, it was back to being a COVID ward again. So I never, but I did write notes to to the nursing staff and things like that.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. So you're able to move on, and you talked about moving from the COVID ward to a room that had beautiful windows. How did you feel moving from that dark place, if you like, to somewhere filled with light?
It was fantastic, because in the COVID ward, I had 2 windows, and they were covered with, like, almost with an air conditioning unit to bring cool air into the room. So you couldn't see out. So when I got to this new ward, which was twice or 3 times as big, I had 4 big, lovely windows, and the sun
Fantastic.
shone through them every day. Yeah, it was good.
Beautiful. And of course, the people didn't have to wear the full protective kit anymore. You must have felt like you'd come back to the land of the living.
Yes, yes. Even though you couldn't see your own family. Yeah.
Yes, of course. So tell us about the day you left hospital.
Well, the day I left hospital actually was Colin's birthday. He couldn't come in the morning because he was having a chairlift fitted for me.
Wow.
And oxygen was coming in the morning. So he couldn't come until the afternoon, about 2 o'clock. He came to pick me up. And when I came out, they clapped because I was going home. And yeah, so it was good to be there and to, talk with my family again. Now I couldn't see Stephen because he was still isolating. He got the COVID from me. He was cleaning up in the little room that I was in, and he got the COVID. But because he was young and he was healthy, he didn't have any lung problems.
Yeah.
So he got over it really quick, and he was at home. He never had to go in the hospital. So.
Oh, good. That's lovely. So I know, looking back, that you and Colin have recognised the fact that Colin had the opportunity to ask people to pray for you when you were in that dark time. And very quickly, he had messages from all over the world with people pledging to pray for you and to bring you before God in their prayers. That must have been really uplifting for you both at the time.
Yes, but I didn't realize how much was coming through. It kind of got Colin through a very difficult time. Every time he heard somebody else, there were people from Cuba, there were people from Mexico. I had a lady from say that she and her family were praying for us every night at their tea table, and that each of her girls prayed for me. And we had people from all over the world. South Africa,
That's
Zambia, Romania. It is. And the thing I like about that is we have a song that we sing in our church. It's only like a little chorus, and it goes, "I'm so glad I'm a part of the family of God. I've been washed in the fountain of Jesus' blood, cleansed by his blood, joint heirs with Jesus as we travel this sod. I'm so glad I'm a part of the family of God. And certainly all those people that were praying showed that they were part of the family of God. The second verse just has one line in it that I'd like to share. When one has a heartache, we all shed a tear. But rejoice in each victory so dear. Well, this was a victory. It was a victory of God's doing. And so whether I went home to be with the Lord or whether I was brought out of the hospital, each part was something that God did, and yeah, so to me, all of these things are just God at work. There was a lady in Canada that said to me, I want you to write this out, and we put it on the website. So we did write it out. And even more people answered and came back. So
Yes.
today, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so that's lovely. I think looking back, we can see how that family of God worked, from the doctor who prayed with you in A&E, the Christian nurse in the COVID wards at Taylor who was with you, the man on the TV, even though he wasn't in the room, he kind of was and spoke God's words over you. And then obviously that worldwide network of prayer that Colin activated. I don't think he knew what he was activating quite when he sent the messages out, but all that worked together, and your trust in God, that you put yourself in God's hands completely, as you put yourself in the care of the NHS, and all those things working together just brought a result that you have a message to share of God's providence in this dark time. So how are you now, and what are your thoughts going forward?
Well, my thoughts are going forward in that I'm still continuing to do what God wants me to do. Share with people, visit people when I'm able. I'm not able at the minute, and it's, I think that's just part and parcel of our work here in Ireland. So my story.
And how are you, Rose?
Well, I'm still on oxygen.
Carry on.
Okay. Still on oxygen. On Tuesday, hopefully, I'm going back to the hospital, to the physiotherapist, and I'm hoping and praying that she will bring me off the oxygen and that I can move about freely. So that's good. I can just thanking the Lord for what he's done, for how he's moved. And we are certainly well aware that everybody that goes into this kind of a situation doesn't necessarily come out the way I did. And so what we are doing is praying that the Lord would help them, help their families, comfort them. Because when you have nobody there with you, when you're at the end, it must be very difficult, because it certainly was difficult at times for me in that ward. I said, I had the Lord, and And you just thank him for what he's done.
Yes, thank you. Yours is a real story of hope. It's been a privilege to share it with you. And I know that you're filled with thanksgiving, and you have a sense that God still has a purpose for you, a reason why he's brought you through, a job to do. So we look forward to continuing to hear of your recovery and being able to share with you in the things that God is giving you to do. So thank you, Rosemary, for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you very
we'll
much.
say goodbye for now.
All right, take care. Bye.
Okay, take care of yourself. Bye.